Jacob Rees-Mogg, the MP, spoke at the annual dinner of a group called Traditional Britain, the Traditional Britain Group. The organisation describes itself as a home to the disillusioned patriot, and this week called for Doreen Lawrence, mother of the murdered teenager Stephen Lawrence, and others from ethnic minorities to, and I quote, return to their natural homelands. This is from their webpage, Traditional Britain's webpage. I quote, it is simply an embarrassment. It is a monstrous disgrace that this Lawrence woman, who is no friend of Great Britain and who is totally without merit, should be recognised like this, in other words, ennobled, or in any other way. In fact, she, along with millions of others, should be requested to return to their natural homelands. And I'm joined by Gregory Lauder-Frost, the Vice President of Traditional Britain. Good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning.
What is Traditional Britain? What is it for?
We essentially believe in a traditional Britain, and we look to the old way, to finding the old ways forward. Obviously, we're opposed to political correctness and all the other things that have been thrust upon us in the last 40 years. And we are interested in a vast range of subjects, whether it's architecture, whether it's the countryside, whether it's immigration. We're interested in all the things that affect Britain today, and our aims are on our webpage.
And what about this suggestion, which is on your webpage, that it is a monstrous disgrace?
I think you'll find that was on the Facebook page.
Is that very different?
Yes, the website is a different page to the Facebook page.
But if it was on the Facebook page of Traditional Britain, then presumably it still represents the views of the organisation, or at least some members.
It was a comment that was made in response to Mrs. Lawrence's being raised to the peerage, which we found to be quite offensive.
Why did you find it offensive?
Because we don't feel that there was any merit. I mean, you've already read it all out. We don't feel there's any merit in it whatsoever.
Any merit in what?
In raising such a person to the peerage.
And when you say such a person as Doreen Lawrence, what do you mean?
I mean, an complete nobody. She's been raised there for politically correct purposes.
And what do you mean by a complete nobody?
Well, she is a complete nobody. She's just a campaigner about her son's murder.
And
there's lots of people get murdered. Are we going to raise the mothers who are campaigning about their children's murders, or are we going to raise them all to the peerage, are we?
Well, she wasn't campaigning about her son's murder. What she was campaigning for was justice for her son.
It is still not a good enough reason to raise someone to the peerage.
Well,
it's ridiculous. They've kicked out people who have sat in the House of Lords for 1,000 years consecutively, father to son, with all that knowledge, with all that experience of running the country, and we're filling the House of Lords up with spivs. This is unacceptable.
Are you calling Doreen Lawrence a spiv?
In political management terms, yes.
How could Doreen Lawrence, the mother of an innocent boy who was murdered, be possibly described as a spiv?
I'm not going to be drawn on this. This is not about an innocent boy or anything else. We're talking about the appointment of an individual to the House of Lords.
I mean,
it's wrong.
The Facebook post says this Lawrence woman, who is no friend of Great Britain.
Well, she's made countless anti-English comments over the last 10 years. She's made endless comments. She's called us racists. She's called us everything going. She's no friend of the English people, in our opinion. But that is how we see it. You know? That's how we see it.
And let me continue. And you say, and this woman, who is no friend of Great Britain and who is totally without merit, should be recognised, that it's appalling that she should, an embarrassment and a monstrous disgrace that she should be recognised like this, by which you mean ennobled.
Yes,
and you say, in fact, she, along with millions of others, should be requested to return to their natural homelands. What do you mean by that?
Well, the 1970 Conservative Party General Election Manifesto pledged that they would halt immigration and that they would set up a government agency to encourage people to return to their natural homelands, and it would be well funded, and that they would give assistance to all those who wanted to return to their natural homelands. We continue to support this manifesto pledge, even though the Conservative Party never did anything about it. We think that immigration has reached a serious crisis stage in Great Britain, and therefore we think that we should be encouraging people to return to their natural homeland.
There's a difference, though, between requesting people to return to this bizarre idea of a natural homeland, because after all, very many of the people that I believe you're talking about were born here in Great Britain, in the United Kingdom, in which case this is their actual homeland. They don't have a natural homeland. They have a homeland, a place in which they were born, which is here, right here in the United Kingdom.
That's your opinion, and you're entitled to it just as we're entitled to ours. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I knew people who were born in India and lived there for 3 generations, but Mrs. Gandhi had no difficulty in telling them that this was not the place that they should be and that they should go home.
And is that how you feel about all?
I feel what I've just said, that we should be trying to encourage people to take up assisted voluntary repatriation. That is what I'm saying.
And why do you think that?
Conservative Party.
Yes, but that was 43 years ago. In what way?
I don't care if it was 43 years ago. That's a short period in the space of history.
In what way do you think this country would benefit if all those who have emigrated here were to say, okay, fine, yes, we will go back to, as you said, our natural homeland? I mean, how do you think this country would improve were that to happen?
I think it'd be a great relief for our country, and in so many ways, whether it's schooling, whether it's benefits, whether it's housing, people from ethnic backgrounds now make up 13% of our population, and this is now an unacceptable level. We see Professor David Coleman's report that came out, was published in The Independent yesterday, that the immigration has become the primary driver of demographic change in our country, and that by 2070, the indigenous population will be a minority in the United Kingdom. Now, for the traditional Britain group, that is obviously completely unacceptable.
Do you think that your policies, your beliefs are racist?
No. What does that word mean?
Well, do you think you discriminate against one group?
We're not discriminating.
Or another group on the grounds of race?
We are not discriminating against anyone. I have said nothing unpleasant about people, about aliens, nothing at all. What I have said... Excuse me,
just to ask a question, are you referring to people born in this country as aliens?
Well, the Duke of Wellington famously said, if you're born in a stable, it doesn't necessarily make you a horse. And I'm sorry, but, we've got to get a grip on this immigrant problem. You don't have to be far right, you don't have to be a Nazi, you don't have to be a fascist, you just have to be a normal person who can think clearly. We are faced, the indigenous population of Great Britain are faced with becoming a minority in their own country within the next 50 years.
And of course,
I find that to be completely unacceptable.
But if you are, and I'm sure you are, a student of history and a studier of the tradition of this country, you will know that there's no such thing as an indigenous population of this country. Everybody came from somewhere originally, and I'm wondering where your family originally hailed from. But nobody was born an indigenous Brit. People might have come via Vikings, via Goths, Visigoths, from Scandinavia, from Italy, from all sorts. They might be of Huguenot descent. They might be from Ireland originally. I mean, just because people have a white complexion doesn't mean by any means that they are indigenous, because nobody is, are they?
But it's not to do so much with skin colour, it's to do with culture and the fact that all the people in Great Britain are of European stock.
And so you're saying anyone from outside Europe originally should be requested to go back to, as you say, their natural homeland?
The Oxford English Dictionary describes an alien as someone who does not belong. So, Enoch Powell used this word constantly, and I feel that he was right.
All right, I'm going to use myself as an example here and ask what you would do with me. So I'm Jewish.
Right.
I was born in northwest London.
Right.
I went to Haberdashers' School for Girls in Elstree, and I read English literature at Trinity College, Cambridge. My
Right.
parents were both born in this country. Most of my four grandparents, well, I think one of my grandparents was born in Krakow originally. They came to this country escaping the pogroms and also the Holocaust.
Yeah.
On one side, I have a great-grandmother that was born in this country, or did have a great-grandmother born in this country.
But they're all European.
I think one
Just a different religion.
one of my great grandfathers was born in Palestine, was a Sabra actually, and that's not, I don't think that counts as Europe. But where is my natural homeland? Where should I go? Where would you send me to?
Well, of course, if I was a Zionist, I'd say that your natural homeland was in Israel.
But why? I wasn't born in Israel.
Well, I can see where you're coming from, but the fact...
Where am I coming from? Only Totteridge, northwest London. That's where I come from.
Okay, well, I'm quite happy with that. Your family are obviously European, from what you've just said to me. That's not the point. I've made my point. I don't know how you wish me to keep elaborating on it.
Well, because it's a point that many people will find in every way. First of all, impossibly difficult to understand, unpalatable.
Now, explain to me why what I have said will be impossible to understand.
Because the idea that people who have either come here in order to make a better life here, to work here, to pay taxes, to raise families, or people who were actually born here, and all they know is here, just as I only know here, English and British cultural references, British sense of humour, music, food, clothes, location, geography, weather. I mean, people who were born here and people who come here especially to make a life here and try to carve out something for themselves and their families, they don't know anything else. They can't be repatriated to somewhere else, a natural, in inverted commas, homeland, because most of them have never even been there. And even if they have, it's been as a tourist. It hasn't been as someone revisiting a home.
That is not supported by the information that we have. Most of the immigrants from the subcontinent continue very strong relations with the subcontinent. They send money back there. They send their children back there to have some schooling. They have arranged marriages, even when there's cricket and matches in Britain and so on. They don't support Britain, they support Pakistan or India.
This is not what we're recognising here among my colleagues here in the office. I don't think we're recognising that. But I'd like to ask you two. I'd like to ask you two more questions, please.
Traditionally conservative.
Let me ask you two more questions. The first is this: why has Jacob Rees-Mogg, the MP, said that he was silly to accept the invitation to speak at your annual dinner, do you think?
Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask him that, because we invited him to come and speak to us on his views of a traditional Britain.
And finally, I'd like to say something rather than ask something, and that is that the idea that you have described Doreen Lawrence as no one, a nobody, this Lawrence woman, I think to very many people, and myself included, is enormously offensive. It is rude and contemptuous and shows no respect at all for an absolutely decent woman who has laboured for years
to abuse us and insult us.
Well, that isn't what I was going to say, to seek justice in the face of what was found by the Macpherson report to be institutional racism.
Well, there's a book by Professor Ellis on the Macpherson report, which maybe you should read.
Well, I thank you for talking to us. That's Gregory Lauder-Frost, Vice President of an organisation called Traditional Britain.